This is logged in on November 25th, 2023, Eastern Standard Time. Sensitive material has been breached and it is now in front of the public. This is very sensitive documentation and the world will be in total chaos if leaked, and it is now leaked. All of it. Not one document, all of it. Place of exploitation, forbidden knowledge television. This must be stopped.
All right. I hope you guys like that Forbidden Knowledge TV commercial. I am Billy Carson, aka Forbidden Knowledge, and I'm here on the Forbidden Knowledge podcast with my very good friend and best-selling author of multiple books, Paul Anthony Wallace. How you doing, Paul?
G'day, Billy. I'm fantastic, thanks, and it's wonderful to be with you again.
All right, man. I know you're halfway around the world from me, all the way in Australia, right?
Yes, that's right. So it's the beginning of a new day here. I think we are a day ahead of you guys. It's Friday morning here, so we're in the future.
Wow. Back to the future, man. I'm glad you were able to take some time to come on tonight so we can talk a lot about the Anunnaki Enigma, religious beliefs, and how we're going to do a very special workshop that's going to teach people how to research, how to learn, how to investigate, and how to change their entire belief systems based on educated decisions from what they've been able to actually discern. And so it's going to be a great talk tonight.
Yes, I'm really looking forward to it. I'm sensing from people who correspond with me, there's a real demand for exactly this thing. People talk about paradigm shifts, but how do you actually make them? How do you achieve them for yourself?
Right, exactly. And that's going to be the key topic for tonight. And I want everyone who's watching this video, please click the like button. Please share the video. All right, this is a very, very important video because if you want to take part with us in helping to free the minds of people, they need to hear what we have to say. They need to be at this upcoming workshop that we have, because what we have found out, we meaning myself and Paul, we've discovered that a lot of people are really excited about this information. However, when it comes to researching it for themselves, they don't even know where to start. So we're going to break some of that down tonight, and we're going to be able to teach you in our workshop exactly where to start, how to reconstruct your mindset based around these topics, how to discern information, how to connect the dots. It's going to be a great talk tonight, all right? So please make sure you guys share the video, and please, again, for the algorithm's sake, please click the like button so that we can maximize our efforts tonight. You can be a huge part in helping to shift the consciousness of the entire planet by helping us get more people involved in taking part in this amazing workshop. Now, the first thing I want to do, I didn't give a full and total introduction to you, Mr. Paul Anthony Wallace, because you have such a huge biography. I want you to spend a little bit of time breaking it down to my followers and let them know who you are, where you came from, what you did for a living, and for actually a passion as well, and where you are right now.
For sure. Well, of course, by the time you reach a certain age, you should have a huge bio behind you. And mine was for 33 years in church-based ministry. And so this background surprises a lot of people today who know me as the paleo contact guy. And I should clarify for people, paleo contact is the theory that our ancestors had contact with other civilizations in the deep past. And so people know me for the Fifth Kind, for the Eden series books that really explore that territory. But my route into it was through the world of ministry. For 33 years, I was a theological educator. So I was training pastors, particularly in the history of Christian thought and in hermeneutics. And those are the principles of interpretation. How do you know how to read ancient texts. How do you get from the text what the writer intended? And then what do you do with that? And so I was training pastors in that for 15 years. And then I worked as a church doctor. And that's somebody who goes in for sort of surgical interventions in communities of faith that are having problems. And they may be political, government problems. They may be appointment processes. They may be spiritual problems where you need to do rather more stretching things like entity removal to get a community functioning healthily. So that was another part of my work. I was a church planter for many years, but it was those roles as a church doctor and a theological educator that really stretched my own worldview, forced me to engage with realities that a lot of us can ignore in our day-to-day lives, but also forced me to engage with the ancient texts and all the questions thrown up by messages that have been sent to us from distant cultures, very, very different to our own. Wow. And it was in that area that I started coming across a hidden story, a story that had gone untranslated, sitting in the pages of the Bible itself. And when I went to the root meanings of the key words, I realized that the ancient Mesopotamian stories from ancient Sumeria, Babylonia, Arcadia, and Assyria are buried in the texts of the Bible. And where they overlap, those correlations can be found in other ancestral narratives all around the world. So that was the white rabbit that got me down this rabbit hole into the whole world of human origins, human potential. And on that journey, obviously, my whole faith and worldview had to morph and adapt with the data that I was finding. And it can be quite a challenging journey to make. And so having myself, my books are all about helping other people to make these same discoveries and make a similar journey of transformation.
Yes, absolutely amazing. So, yes, for those of you who are listening, we actually have an actual theologian here, a pastor. We have a man that has been in the clergy for decades, and we're here to bring you the real knowledge.
I missed out one thing on my resume I should mention, which is that I served as an archdeacon for the Anglican Church in Australia. That's one down from a bishop. And so it is very unusual to have somebody from sort of that part of the world, a senior churchman, as it's called, speaking about the topics that you and I look at, Billy. And I think that's a lot of what catches people's attention.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And by the way, like I said, a best-selling author of multiple books. Make sure you check out the Eden series by Paul Wallis on Amazon. I'll drop the link also in the caption of this live video so that when you come back to it, you can go and check out the link and you can get your hands on a solid block of knowledge. And Paul, you also have a brand new book out right now.
I certainly do. It's The Invasion of Eden. And so this came out just last month in April. And what The Invasion of Eden looks at is where paleocontact intersects with what's happening right now in the world of ufology, in the world of American politics. There was an extraordinary clash last year between the Pentagon and elements of the US Congress, and that was about the secrecy around the Pentagon's program of R&D development from UAP retrievals. That's a very current topic. It's in the news. And I've written to that and answered the question, do our ancestors have anything to help us process what's going on and know how to process that? Can we take it seriously? What does it mean?
Absolutely. So again, for everyone who's just joining us, we're here with Paul Anthony Wallace, a very good friend of mine. He is the host and owner of The Fifth Kind TV on YouTube. I'll drop the link to his YouTube account beneath this video as well. So you'll be able to go over there, like, and subscribe. They just hit 1 million subscribers not too long ago. So congratulations on that, Paul.
Thanks, Billy. And I should shout out. I should shout out to my collaborator, who I know is watching, and that's Tony Barrett, who got The Fifth Kind rolling. So it's really a collaboration, and it's really exciting seeing the demand for the material that we're putting out on The Fifth Kind.
Oh, absolutely. It's an amazing network, amazing channel. I had the fortune of being a guest on your podcast before on The Fifth Kind. and it did wonders for even my exposure. A lot of your people resonated with my information and subscribed to my channel and bought my books. So thank you so much. I appreciate both of you.
Oh, it's a pleasure, and it's always fun having conversations with you.
Oh yeah, thank you, man. Tonight we're going in deep. So tonight, guys, we're talking about the Anunnaki with the pastor, with the archdeacon. Pretty cool. All right, you probably won't find this anywhere else. So except on the Fifth Kind TV. So this is pretty interesting. When I first met Paul and had a long, extensive discussion with him, right here in this room, actually, we had like a discussion, conversational podcast. I began to realize how much we resonate on the same frequency in terms of the information and our discernment. And I recognized that I had a lot that I can learn from him, as well as maybe he heard a few things that he might be able to glean from me as well. And I like being in two-way conversations where I'm not just giving, but I'm also receiving and getting information and knowledge that I can apply into my own life. And so that's why it's an honor to work with this man. And talking about the Anunnaki, it's very hard to talk to anyone that comes out of the church about the Anunnaki, the Anunna, and these beings of old, as potentially being from other planets or other dimensions. What are your thoughts specifically on that information, Paul?
For me, it was life-changing finding that information because I hadn't seen the connection with the cosmos, with other worlds, other civilizations, until I saw the connections between the Bible, which was home base for me, and the stories of the Anunnaki. And it really was through the work of Bible translation that I found those connections. And then when you read these narratives alongside each other, the ET aspect of the Anunnaki stories becomes very, very clear. And again, moving on from there and finding the same themes and motifs in Mayan story, African story, Norse story, Vedic stories, Greek stories. When you put them alongside each other, that's when the ET aspect becomes unmistakable. Now, there are scholars who look at the Anunnaki stories and they don't see them necessarily as ET narratives. They might interpret them another way, but I think that's only possible when you read them in a bubble. And the thing that has happened for me is learning to read the Bible not in a bubble, and the Anunnaki narratives not in a bubble. When you read them alongside each other, the technological aspects suddenly become really stark. The interstellar aspects become really stark and become completely unmissable. And you realize that we're being given information not just about long lost cultures from Mesopotamia, but information about humanity and our place on the planet and our history in the cosmos. So it really is paradigm shifting in that way. And I found that when your story of human origins shifts, which it has to as you make that journey, so your understanding of who we are today changes. Your understanding of what our potential is changes. And you realize these stories are not just about the past, they're about equipping us for a better, more powerful, more fulfilling human experience in the present.
Exactly. That's exactly, like I said, the same frequency. That's the purpose and the reason why I dig so deep into this ancient information, because I believe the past is prologue, and it will give us the concept and idea and the knowledge and the changes that we need to make to create a much better future for ourselves and live up to our true potential, which is infinite, right?
Yeah. And I'll say something that it will sound like a non sequitur to a lot of people, but if anyone has ever wondered, how is Billy into this and he's into cryptocurrency, the things are absolutely connected. Because once you reframe these stories, you realize there's information about politics, economics, money that you've missed in the stories because you've been reading them in a religious way or a purely historical way. But again, once you put these stories alongside each other, you see the themes overlapping, and you realize there's information about money right there and the kind of relationship we should have with it and what it means to be more empowered and not dependent on people controlling the value of everything that you're earning. So it was one of the things that amazed me when I first followed this white rabbit into paleo contact, to realize these topics do all connect. And my great challenge, in fact, with writing Escaping from Eden, the first book in the Eden series, was how do I stop this being a book about everything? How do I keep my focus and just allow the reader to make this journey in a more linear fashion? Because these things really are connected. And I think if they didn't connect, if there wasn't a therefore I can do this, or therefore I can do this differently, it would be far less interesting.
Yes, for real. I mean, listen, there's just so much that we can do, and this, for us both, for both of us, it's a passion project. And and the reason why we're doing this workshop, which is coming up very soon, we have a workshop coming up in June, and I'll drop the link in the live chat. The reason why we're doing this workshop is because we want to be able to create more researchers. If you are a person that has really been passionate about this information, that has really wanted to be able to not only listen to us, but go and find things for yourself, build your own theories, ideas, concepts, do your own research, maybe even begin to share the knowledge and information from a position of actually understanding it, not just regurgitating or not just sharing video links, then this workshop is for you, because we're going to teach you how to do the research in the right way. We're going to show you actual scriptures, verses, papyruses, cylinder scrolls, ancient texts and tablets, and all the information on how to break it down in a specific way. And that's something that I think, Paul, no one has ever done a workshop, or at least I haven't seen one, on this type of teaching to give people an understanding of the enigma and the religious belief system that comes from it.
Yeah, I'm really excited about doing that, because one thing people don't need is new priesthoods, people with all the privileged information, and then they just have to sit there drinking it in. We want, as you just said, to create a whole new generation of researchers. And I think it's far more helpful and empowering to people to show people the tools we use when we do our research, how we approach the ancient texts. I have a lot of people contacting me who are really hungry to make this paradigm shift. They've seen sort of fragments of the picture, and so they go to the Enuma Elish or the Epic of Gilgamesh, the Atrahasis. They sit down with it and they think, what is this? Because it does not read like modern prose. Right. And I think some people sit down hoping this text is now going to explain how things really are. And it's very difficult even to make sense from line to line what is happening. Mm-hmm. And so people do need a little bit of coaching to say, well, this is how you listen to this text. This is how you let this text speak. This is how you begin to recognize the themes. And just to coach people through that. And in a way, I did that back in my time in ministry, where if I was researching to bring teaching to a community, I would sit down with certain tools, certain books that would help me unlock the texts. So I would have an interlinear, I would have a lexicon, I would have these dictionaries and resources, I would have concordances, and that's what would enable me to research and produce, a fantastic teaching series. But when I'd been in the ministry for longer, I realized it was far more valuable to show my people all those resources and say, you can get these too. Yeah. You can use these same tools to get into the texts, to get out of them all the richness that's there, and not just have to be dependent on a preacher or a writer or a priest to tell you what's what. And I think we're in an age where people have that knowledge for that appetite for direct knowledge. They really want to know what's going on. They don't just want to say, oh, I follow this expert or I follow that expert. And so I think the time is right to be giving people the tools, showing people the resources that are out there, and then showing them how to use them so that they can begin plumbing the wisdom that our ancestors bequeathed not just to experts, but to all of us.
Absolutely. You hit it on the head. And there's so much information. I mean, in my house alone, there's over 1,500 books. Where does one person begin? Where do you begin? So this is why it's important for you. If you're passionate about this kind of knowledge, you need to sign up for our workshop, because we're going to show you where to begin, where to go. I mean, there's just on my desk here, I have the Enuma Elish, right? I have the Nag Hammadi scripts, right? I have the Bhagavad Gita. I have the Holy Bible, right? What else do I have? I have the Babylonian Talmud. I have the Talmud here. I have the Sefer Yetzirah. I've got all these books just sitting here. I've got the Tibetan Book of the Dead. I have this is just my last week's research. I have the Myth of Adapa. I mean, I could just keep going on and on and on. And so there's so much, the people don't even know usually where to even begin to kind of start, putting dots on so they can begin to connect the dots. That's what this workshop is truly all about. When you get done with this workshop from Paul and I, you're going to get a certificate of accomplishment or completion with your name on it and our signatures on it. Okay. So you're going to get a certificate of completion of our course that we're going to send out to everyone via a PDF file that you can print out at your house and put in a really nice frame if you want to put it up on your wall. But this is the kind of class that nobody is teaching. I truly don't believe this even exists. I could be wrong, but I have looked and I have never seen it. Okay, I've never seen this kind of class or workshop before. You're going to spend about 6 hours with us on, I believe that's Saturday. And that's June, we're going to lean to the left, 2 p.m., June 26th, 2 p.m., June 26th to about 7 p.m. And we're going to break down the knowledge, right? And Paul, you said something before we went live tonight that we're going to give the people in regard to some of these resources that they can get their hands on if they get a ticket.
Oh, definitely. I mean, in my research, I've found fabulous online resources that will give you an entree into the kind of work and research we're talking about for free. So, some of the books I was talking about before can be quite expensive to acquire, but there are online equivalents that you can access for free. And once you started doing that, you realize, actually, I think I will get that book. It may be expensive, but now I've got used to using these kind of resources. I know I'm going to get value out of getting the physical books. But it's a very nice way in that allows you to sort of taste and try the kind of resources we're talking about.
Exactly. And when you get done with this workshop, I guarantee you that you will be able to sound extremely confident and secure in speaking to someone that may be part of a particular religion, that maybe has questions, or maybe you're showing them where they can look a little bit deeper into what they're believing in, but in a very nice and concise way, but a very professional way, to give them the opportunity to go then and look for themselves. But when you speak to them or when you show them the evidence, it's going to be undeniable, because you will have the tools and the skills to be able to explain it. Okay, to be able to explain it, something that people will rarely teach you. That's what we're teaching in this workshop. All right, and it's going to be amazing.
I find a lot of people ask me for exactly what you've just said. They're finding their way into this topic, but they're very anxious about how do they explain this to their friends who are part of a faith community, or their family who may be part of a faith community. They don't want to jump in before they feel confident they know what they're talking about. But I think even harder than that sometimes is if people are coming from a faith background, they've probably got a little voice in their own head that's critiquing and questioning and double guessing all the time, and putting pressure on people to be able to explain everything and have everything buttoned down. They don't have that permission to explore. And to be a researcher, you have to be comfortable with not knowing. And in order to arrive at new conclusions, you have to have a way of parking current conclusions without feeling completely disoriented. That's actually part of the research process too. And so we're going to be talking about that as well. How do we do that? How do we identify beliefs that may be hindering us from researching? How do we park those? How do we get around the self-editing that we do? Because very often I think people put themselves under pressure to have everything reframed and sorted out and buttoned down by the weekend. And I don't know about you, Billy, but for me, it really took some months and some years to fully get my head around the shifts being implied by the data. And so it's, how do we make that journey? How do we keep our sense of integrity, our sense of security, while all our beliefs seem to be doing this? So we're going to look at some of those practical and personal and pastoral things as well in the workshop.
Yes, absolutely. And I want to address one person in the live chat, and not in a negative way, but this person says, how come your history research don't include your own people? Now, I know you've been watching me for many years, Paul. I think I've included every race of person inside of my research.
Yes,
so,
same here.
Yeah, I know. I mean, you're an African-American man. Well, you're an Australian, but you're a Black Australian. I'm a Black American.
That's right.
Right. But we, one thing I think people need to understand about the teaching styles that we have is we're not supremacists. Okay.
No.
And what I mean by that is we aren't Black power, white power, yellow power, red power, green power. We are about human power. And as far as I can tell from Paul's teachings and from my teachings, I have seen the incorporation of every race, creed, and color on this planet into these teachings and studies and podcasts and networks and everything else and TV shows, where you name it, where we've been in our books. And so this statement from this person, Proper T, I'm just telling you in a very nice and loving way, you need to do a little bit more research about us, because the movie poster for my Anunnaki TV series, the movie poster, the center person is a Black man in the center of the movie poster. That's the first thing you see on the movie coming out, Anunnaki Ancient Secrets Revealed. Yeah. So it's just sometimes, you just jump in, but take a little bit more time to do a little bit more research before you jump in and make some comments. I rarely address commenters, but I want people to understand and know, like, this isn't about supremacy. I think the supremacy mindset, it hinders mankind. It keeps us from growing. It keeps us from developing. It keeps us from reaching our true potential whenever we think that we are better than this one and this one's better than that one. And I think that's all a part of that huge divide and conquer tactic that started way, way back, eons and eons ago. And we can still see from a comment like that, the effects of it still to this very day. A lot of people are just, because of the things that have happened to us in the past, still yearning and grasping and reaching to say, hey, claim us. This is our thing too. Well, that's what we're doing. And that's why you should be in the workshop as well.
For me, it's actually the international scope of these stories that really excites me. And when people read the Eden series, they'll find they're traveling all around the world. And so we go to Africa, we go to India, we go to Scandinavia, we go to the Philippines, we go to ancient Mesopotamia in the invasion of Eden, we go to Turkey and the lands of ancient Armenia. I've got Chinese story in the invasion of Eden. And what I find making those journeys exciting. I love that people, if they read the Eden books, they'll feel like they're reading a travel book, because we really are going all around the world. I resonate with a lot of these stories because I'm like a walking international meeting myself, because I've got African blood in me, Welsh, Scandinavian, Swiss, German, English. I'm a real blend, and I talk a bit about the information that comes from my own heritage in the invasion of Eden. And I've really enjoyed, as I've put the books out, people who have contacted me who've said so much for sharing the Hawaiian story of the mo'o, or thank you so much for sharing our story in the Philippines of the duende or the encantos. Or I have Luo people or Yoruba people contacting me and saying, you've told our story. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
And very often my research path has been enriched by people approaching me from all around the world and saying, can I tell you our story? Because it feeds into your research.
Yeah.
And so the person who asked the question, I think will be really pleased when they dig into your work, Billy, and my work, and find that actually we are tapping the wisdom of the ages from all around the planet. And I think when you do that, it unravels a lot of the supremacist kind of thinking or binary kind of thinking, where I think religious texts have often trained people to think in terms of us and them. And it's been deeply, deeply unhelpful.
Yeah.
But I find the texts you and I probe give us a far more layered view of the world. So if you go, for instance, into the Mesopotamian stories, you look at the texts from ancient Sumeria, Babylonia, Arcadia, and Assyria, they're not religious texts. They're not stories of good versus evil or goodies and baddies. There's a whole spectrum of beings with a whole spectrum of agendas. And when you start seeing the world through that kind of a lens, you've got a far more subtle, nuanced way of understanding things. And I think we need that today. I think if we approach the world, our own communities, or the world of international politics in a binary way, well, who's right, who's wrong, who's good, who's bad, you're never going to achieve understanding, let alone world peace, if you approach things that way. You've got to realize there's a spectrum of people and a spectrum of agendas, a spectrum of nations, a spectrum of agendas. And it's about who are we best aligned with and where do we find our agreement? And I love that international vision that comes from these ancient texts really equips us for understanding the present in a far more sophisticated and empowered way.
Absolutely, man. You hit it right. I said so eloquently, hit it right on the head. We have to understand, like, what is the color of consciousness? What is the color of consciousness? You know what I'm saying? At the end of the day, I think that people get so caught up in these meat suits that we're inhabiting that they forget that we're spiritual beings having a physical experience. And this is a temporal thing, temporal in time. And this is temporary. Our true higher selves are in a whole nother dimension. And so it's really interesting when I read books like The Myth of Adapa, right? And I'm able to get information from this ancient Mesopotamian text where I'm finding out that the human avatar is set up to be one of the most complex and intricate structures in the universe, and that the Anunnaki say this themselves, that the Adapa, which is the first man, was created to be perfect, and that all the knowledge of the universe is in his body. And we haven't even tapped into that yet, right? It's set up in a way that over time, we would be able to learn how to access this incredible knowledge and wisdom, and that consciously we would continue to ascend. And they said that we can even become higher than them. Now, when I see verses like that, for example, in this workshop that we're going to do, right, just to give them a little taste, when I see a statement like that in the Myth of Adapa that says they were created higher than us, that sounds a lot like a biblical text that I've read before, where the angels were saying that the humans were created higher than them, and some of them got angry about that.
Yes, it's so interesting, the correlations, because that explanation of the beauty of the human form and the whole mystery of the cosmos being secreted in the human form, you can find that in Jesus's teaching. When he says the kingdom of heaven is within you, you go to the root meaning of those words. Kingdom, that's realm. Heaven, that's the skies, the universe. So the whole cosmic realm is within us. So if we look deep within ourselves, we'll find the cosmos. You'll find that in Egyptian and Greek thought, of course. You go into Hermeticism, and the idea is there that when you study the very close, you'll be understanding the very distant. When you study the very small, you'll be understanding the big picture. And so we just named 3 cultures there, offering the same phenomenal insight, using different language, different imagery, but it's the same truth.
Facts, absolute facts. This class is going to be as a mind-blowing class. Like I said, it's something that rarely has ever been taught, if taught at all. If you are a person that really is passionate about this Anunnaki, this ancient information, this ancient wisdom and knowledge, these ancient mystery school teachings and so forth, and where the origins of them come from and how it breaks down into religion and everything else, and how it applies to us today, and to be able to learn where to go, how to research, how to break down the information, how to discern it, how to understand from what tone you're reading the context of the information. And what I like, Paul, earlier, we were talking before going live, you had mentioned, if you can bring that up again, how to break down your belief system, which is what will be needed to gain this knowledge.
Well, yes, that's right. So I think a couple of things happen. If you're coming from a place where you've got a really defined worldview, I mean, you might be an atheist and you've got some very strong control beliefs, or you might be coming from a religious start point, you've got some strong control beliefs. You are going to find data that's going to bump up against your pre-existing conclusions. But there are a couple of things, a couple of ways in which you can be impacted by that. And the first is that in order to be a researcher, you have to be comfortable with not knowing. And I know from my background in Christianity that there are certain beliefs and expectations that make a lot of believers very uncomfortable with not knowing. So if you come, for instance, from a confessional church where your faith is based on a doctrinal statement, your faith is built on knowing certain things, isn't it? And so you have to first identify that and realize, okay, to research certain things, I am going to have to park that over here. And unless I can do that, I don't have the freedom to explore. If my sense of security in the cosmos is connected with knowing what I believe about everything, I might as well stop right now. So you have to identify things that could be a problem, that could be breaks, and then know how to park them. Another aspect, I came from evangelical Christianity where hell is taught as a doctrine. So that's hell for the non-believer. So that's all tied in with beliefs and conclusions. And I was very fortunate when I went through theological college that I had the time and the opportunity to really critique that doctrine and find that it's not built on solid foundations in terms of the Bible. And so I was able to put that doctrine in a box and realize that's not necessarily the right explanation of what Jesus was on about. And until you can do that, you have a pressure on you to have your doctrine buttoned down. And so when you go to a text, you are trying to correlate it to things you already believe. So it's almost like you've got a checklist of things you've either got to find corroborated or challenged 100% so you can replace it in one hit. That's not going to work. Right. Because it will take a while to understand the text you're reading. It will take a while to recognize the patterns, a while to recognize the different story it's telling, a while to identify what it addresses and doesn't address in the faith point that you're starting from. So again, you have to give yourself permission for that length of process. So if you've got a voice in your head that says, don't rely on your own thinking, just believe everything the Lord tells you, which is the translation of a verse from the Proverbs, you've got to realize that's going to be a problem for you. And it's not about dishonoring God. It's about giving yourself the freedom to critique beliefs. And a first step to doing that is to being able to separate your beliefs from your idea of God. I mean, I believe in God. I always have to clarify what I mean by that, because it's a word that means different things to different people. And I feel very comfortable with that language and with my sense of connection.
Yeah.
And I know that that is something different to my beliefs.
Mm-hmm.
My beliefs might help me to access that sense of connection with God, or they might not. But I have to realize they're not the same thing if I'm going to start critiquing my beliefs.
Yeah.
Some people, their faith is like a Jenga tower, where, you know, this piece of the puzzle depends on this, on this, on this, on this, on this. So if I pull out a piece at the bottom of the Jenga tower to look at it, the whole thing is going to tumble down. And I think before you can really start reframing belief, you have to be willing to see your faith differently, as a whole number of Jenga pieces sitting on a table. So you can pick one up at a time, question it, consider it, put it back down without that terror that everything is going to come tumbling down.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got to do a bit of self-reflection on where's your sense of security? How are your beliefs structured? Do you feel able to park certain beliefs over here and come back to them later to see if you still think they're correct or if they need finessing? You've got to do that work prior. Otherwise, when you go into the texts, you start trying to make comparisons before you've understood the text. You start trying to make corrections before you've got the big picture. And so I want to help people walk through that process, name those things, name that process for themselves. It's not hard. It's just something you've got to be very intentional about in order to really become a researcher. Back in the day, when I was a boy, when I was a very young boy, people talked about being seekers, and people understood what that meant. They were truth seekers, and they were looking for authenticity. They were looking for a real experience of life. And for my money, that's what a researcher is. It's a seeker. And being a seeker and having 101 conclusions you're never going to question are not the same thing. And I had to come to terms for myself of realizing that being a believer and a seeker are not the same thing. They can go together, but they don't always go together, especially if you come from one of those confessional churches. So, you know, it's a really internal, personal, pastoral process you have to go through to free yourself up. But we want to help people take those steps as well, so that they can get into the really juicy stuff of what do the texts say and what are the implications.
Right. Absolutely. It's going to be an incredible teaching process. You know what they say, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. And when the teacher is ready, the master will appear. And we are all three. We're the student, we are the teacher, and we are the master. And this is all about getting people started on their own journey into learning. And you start off as a student asking questions. We're going to show you how to find answers to your questions, and you will become the teacher of yourself, you see? And eventually, if you keep working at it, you'll become the master. And, you know, one of the things I find, Paul, in a lot of these texts is, especially the religious texts, mostly, is when I start talking to people and they try to have a two-way conversation with me, they can't go too deep because it's based only on one book. So, for example, if I'm talking to somebody in Christianity, they have no knowledge outside of this one book, even though this one book is a culmination of multiple ancient text scriptures and papyruses and verbal histories, everything else from around the world. This is a heavily curated book. And beyond that, they don't have any reference point. And so I think that hinders a lot of people, which is what you were just talking about. It hinders a lot of people from being able to see outside of that box and being able to drop some of the fears and the stress of thinking that they're doing something disrespectful, to go look at some other material and information so that they can begin to discern it and see if it aligns with their current ideology, current information.
Yes. Yes, that's right.
Yeah, that's important.
I mean, I think a lot of people in the churches have been taught to read the Bible in a bubble, but the Bible doesn't tell you to do that.
No.
And in fact, when you read books in the Old Testament and the New Testament, very often the writers assume you've read other stuff that isn't in the Bible. So if you read Genesis 6 or Jude, they all assume you've read the book of Enoch, which is not in the main canon of the Bible. It is in Ethiopia, but nowhere else. But they assume you've read that. Or you read the Old Testament, they assume you've read all the annals of the kings, which are not all included in the Bible. And if you go to, for an example, if you go to the story of the birth of Isaac, you might puzzle over that if you're just reading the Bible all on its own. But as soon as you start reading world literature, if you read about the history of Buddhism or the Yellow Emperor or Lao Tzu, you'll realize that the birth of Isaac is part of a global family of stories that are very, very similar, and that illuminates what the story of Isaac is about. It illuminates what the story of Abraham and Sarah is about. I think, again, people need to know the Bible doesn't tell the reader to read only this book. That's often what churches have said. And for some Christians, it's a boast. Oh, the Bible is the only book I read. Well, that's lovely, but the Bible hasn't told you to do that. And you'll have a richer understanding of it when you put it in its context.
Yes.
There's an amazing text, and I think we'll use this as a case study in the workshop. It's in the book of I won't say too much, but it's in the book of Genesis. And you read it and you'll absolutely puzzle over it because it doesn't make sense. As soon as you read it alongside the Enuma Elish from ancient Mesopotamia, a light bulb will flick on and you'll realize that's what that story is about. Sometimes we need to read the Bible in a wider context in order to understand, oh, this is that kind of story. Oh, this is that kind of being. Oh, that's what was going on. And so we'll use that case study because it really, then I think really does encourage people to start exploring more widely and get that bigger perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. And I saw a young lady or a young man, I can't tell from this, I'm too far away from the screen, had questioned, what about talking to the Nation of Islam? They're so pro-Black, it's hard to break through. Well, that's a fact. I mean, it's really hard to break through. They've had, hundreds of years of that information being really hardcore programmed into them. But I have been able to break through to some, just because the technique that I utilize is not blunt force. When speaking with certain groups of people, I have the ability to drop small seeds, just small seeds, very small seeds, and put a little bit of water on them. And then you step back, you ease back, you give people some time to digest a small amount of thing, maybe send them on a mission to check one or two things out, and you let them go and do that. Some will and some won't. You can't lead a horse to water and make it drink just because you're thirsty. So that's why I added that little extra piece at the end. You're thirsty. Let them become thirsty. Sometimes some of them will come back and you'll be able to have another two-way conversation. They'll begin to ask a few more questions. And that's the same way I think that you should treat family and friends and everyone else. If you come at them too hard, you're going to just push them away. And it's going to turn into a battle. And it's going to be tension in the room, awkward energy when holidays and certain birthdays come around and nobody wants to be around each other. But if you do it in a very gentle and loving way where, you wait for an opportunity that arises for you to inject a small amount of knowledge. I mean, really small. You'll see that the people will begin to reflect on that information, and it may trigger a question. And then that's like the beginning of the snowball rolling down the hill for me. And I answer that one question and I back away again. You see, I'm not pushing too much. And then, maybe a month or a week or 2 weeks later, maybe even right away, another question and another question. Then I see that they're opening up a little bit. Then I begin to elaborate a little bit more. But you can't even begin that process until you get the knowledge. That's why we want to have people in this workshop. Paul and I truly believe that in order to change the world, we need to educate people. We need more people like us duplicating what we are doing. I don't want to be the only person doing this. Paul doesn't want to be the only person doing it. There's 8 billion people on earth. How in the world are we going to reach all 8 billion people if we're doing all the work ourselves? We need more people that are passionate about this information, passionate about ancient history, what we would consider, I guess, as close to the truth as possible, right? And to be able to then share that with as many people as possible in a very professional manner. And that's what this is all about, being able to teach you and give you the tools. There's a there's a school called UCLA in America. I don't know if you've heard of that, Paul. UCLA.
For sure, absolutely.
Okay, big school. They have an online digital library called the UCLA CDLI Online Cuneiform Digital Library. Don't say that fast 10 times. Okay. And I'm going to go live with our students on the workshop day, right on the screen from the digital library. And I'm going to grab stones, cuneiform tablets right off the virtual shelf and drop them into the translator and show them how to discern and decipher that information right from the online tools that we have there. These are things that the average person don't even know it exists, don't even understand where to go, what to click on to get to it, and how it works. We're going to show you these things and so much more in our workshop. So I'm going to drop the link in the live chat again. Make sure you guys register ASAP. If you are a person that's passionate about learning this information to a level where you can communicate it properly like we can, this class is for you. All right.
I think giving people the tools is a wonderful thing to do, because that's when people can become confident for themselves that they've got their heads around a certain thing, but confident to talk about it as well. Because you're right, Billy, we can reach a world through the grassroots. If people have this knowledge for themselves and gossip it, there's no brakes on that process of learning spreading throughout the community.
Yeah.
But it has to be people who got the confidence to say, well, I've looked at the text, this is what I've seen. And that's totally different to someone saying, well, I think this because Billy said this and Paul said this. Your family's not going to be impressed with that.
No.
Or your friends are not going to be impressed with that. We might have convinced you, but as soon as you're saying, well, Billy says, Paul says, you kind of lost your purchase with the group you're talking to. But if you're saying, well, I've read the cuneiform texts and this is what I found, and this is why I think they say this, that commands a lot more respect. And I think also when you've made the journey for yourself, you've got a conviction when you speak about it that can be very winsome. But yeah. Billy, I love what you just described about your approach to talking with people, because I think you're absolutely right. You can't present people with, well, here are my 5 conclusions, and this is why I'm right. It's far better to appeal to a person's curiosity and just give them one little piece of the puzzle. Or did you know that Genesis 1 isn't a creation story? It's a story of rehabilitating a devastated planet. No? Oh, well, if you look in chapter 1, you might pick that up. That's a really intriguing thing for a lot of people who read the Bible. And if that's all they see when they go back, they'll come back even more curious. And what I am amazed by and delighted by is to find that people are naturally curious. So even if you've got somebody coming at you really angry because they hold a different view, or they want you to agree with them, and you would think, oh gosh, here's a person who's never going to change what they think. The fact is they're still human and they're still curious. Curiosity is endemic to every human being. And there might just be one thing that'll capture their curiosity. Or in conversation with people, you might find they're curious about something you haven't studied and that you don't know about. Encourage that. Because I've found it doesn't matter what the white rabbit is. It doesn't matter which rabbit hole you go down. You will end up in the same great rabbit warren. And the best thing you can do is to encourage a person wherever they are curious, even if it's only about the one thing.
Yep, that's a fact. And, I like how you put that. There's so much information to share and to learn. And when you are speaking to someone and you tell them, I have looked at this text, I have broken down and analyzed the Enuma Elish and the 7 tablets of creation for myself, you're going to get a different kind of response from that person. First of all, you're saying it in first person. I did this, not like you said, Billy and Paul and whoever else is out there. You say I. Now they know, whoa, this person is committed to this information. They've utilized their own energy into putting some type of research into the information. That's going to perk up their ears a little bit when you start naming tablets and texts and papyruses and cylinder scrolls and talking about all the things that we're going to teach you in this class. All of a sudden, it's like, wait a minute, wow, I got to listen a little bit, because I didn't know that John or Jane was even into this kind of stuff at that particular level, right? And then the great thing about this class, it's 100% replays for life. So once you sign up, it's not like when the class ends, we disappear. You'll have access to this class over and over and over again to watch it as many times as you want. I find that a lot of the time, some of these online classes that I do get watched 10 and 15 times by people, because I can go back and see the analytics. I know God Power was watched an average of 8 times per person that attended that 10-hour class, the God Power class I did with Dr. B. So people are getting a lot of value out of this class. It's not like, oh my God, it ended, I didn't write down enough notes. No, it doesn't matter. You can fast forward, rewind, play it over, pause it, come back to it. You can watch it on any device, Apple, iPhone, Google. You can watch it on Samsung TVs, Roku, Amazon Fire TV, the web. So you have a lot of flexibility in where you can move the content around to and actually watch it as well. So it's very flexible. We make it very easy for you. And you don't have to worry about rushing to take notes every second, because while you're taking notes, we're saying something else that's important. You can feel free to take your time, knowing that you can go back and you can replay this information over and over again. I just dropped the link in the live chat again. It's also in the caption of this video or this audio, wherever you're hearing it. Guys, make sure you click the link. And also, real quick, Paul, before we continue, I'm sorry, I must show them a quick video, all right, for the Anunnaki Ancient Secrets Revealed, which is coming up. I want to see you in LA on May the 12th live. I'll be there in person for my amazing new TV series, Anunnaki Ancient Secrets Revealed. It's going to be released as a docuseries, and the first episode of the docuseries is airing in Regal IMAX cinemas, and I want to see you there. And guess what? Paul Wallace just confirmed he will be in season number 2 of Anunnaki Ancient Secrets Revealed.
In an era shrouded in the midst of time, within the vast expanse of an uncharted cosmos, emerged the genesis of humankind. How did the odyssey of humanity begin? What secrets lie within our primordial roots? As I began to research ancient cultures, I discovered something quite interesting. Most of these ancient cultures all believe that life originated in the Pleiades. When you look at the indigenous North Americans, the Mayans, the Aboriginal tribes of Australia, the Egyptians, and even the Japanese, they all claim that they were seeded on this planet by people from the Pleiades. How can people separated by so many thousands of miles in different continents have the same exact story? There must be some fact rooted in the myth. This is the saga of the Anunnaki and their ancient secrets revealed.
All right. So if you have a chance to come out to the Regal IMAX cinemas, I'll be appearing live all around the United States and even in London. So I dropped the link in the live chat. Also in that link, when you click on it, one of the tickets available in there is a ticket to Paul's and I actual workshop class. It's on that same link. All right. So we want to see you guys in the workshop as well. We're going to teach you how to become an amazing ancient historian researcher of this amazing text, tablets, scriptures, papyruses. We're going to break it all out that day, and we're going to teach you how to discern this information, how to connect the dots. And it's going to be an honor having you on there, Paul, because you're really a person that I highly regard and respect in this area, because you have done the research, and the evidence of that is right here in your amazing books, the Eden series. All right. So make sure y'all get Paul's books online. And Paul, we're running out of time, but if you could tell everyone where we can find you online.
For sure. Well, you can find my website at paulanthonywallace.com, and you can contact me through that. You can go to YouTube and find the Paul Wallace channel. I'm in the comments every day, and the Fifth Kind. And we have our website, fifthkind.tv, and all my books are available at amazon.com.
All right. Beautiful. Paul, I'm looking forward to seeing you. We got to go live a couple more times before we have this workshop.
Definitely. I'm really looking forward to the workshop. I know there's a real appetite out there for this. People contact me every day asking for this kind of input, and I love that we can do it in workshop form.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. All right, everyone. It's been a great night. Thank you for joining us tonight. Make sure you click the link in the live chat or in the caption of this video, and make sure you register, because it will be a class to remember. And at the end of that class, you're going to be given research material, and you'll be given a certificate of completion signed by Paul Anthony Wallace and myself. All right. Hey, I appreciate y'all. Thank you so much. And Paul, I'll talk to you very soon.
Thanks, Billy. See you soon.
All right.